I'm having trouble trying to sleep. I'm counting sheep but running out. As time ticks by, still I try. No rest for cross-chops in my mind. On my own, here we go.
Hello and welcome to the Brain Stew podcast, back again, once again, here for your listening pleasure, as many of you, I'm sure, are going to listen. Anyway, what I want to do today is I want to change it up a little. Now, I don't know if you're aware, but I have a YouTube channel called Audience of One. I do post the podcast to the YouTube channel, but I also post it on SoundCloud. So people on SoundCloud, if you're not aware, I have a YouTube channel, and on there I have a number of videos I do. I do vlogs, that's about it. I do vlogs, but on occasion I have been known to make a sitting in front of the camera piece on something that I'm passionate about. One I did recently was my favourite pay-per-views of all time, and it was a top 5 list, and I called it Ranked. And I went through the list, and it was one of my most fun videos to film. I really enjoyed it. I really felt like I was getting something out of it, and I even enjoyed editing it. Editing took a long time, but I did enjoy editing it. It's just when I finally got round to uploading it, I had to make some changes due to copyright and other things like that, and I didn't really get to produce the video that I wanted to produce through the cutaways that I wasn't allowed to use. Now, to avoid that, what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to integrate it into the podcast, because I feel like this idea that I had for the Brain Stew podcast happened about 3 or 4 years ago, where I would talk about 3 or 4 pieces of media that I like just for something to talk about, and that was good for me 3 or 4 years ago, because I feel like I have more time to think about stuff like that. I have more time to watch stuff like that, but nowadays I don't really have the time. I mean, it seems like a bit of an excuse, and I think it's kind of like I'm not really infused with the topic, and I feel like I could do more. And while lists are another thing that is very unoriginal, I will happily agree with you. It's something that, with my autistic mindset, I really like it. It puts everything into order, literally, and and it also leads me to talk about things in more detail and have a better structure to this podcast than I would have with the original format. So that's what I'm going to do. We are now linking Brain Stew Podcast and Ranked. Ranked is no more, and Brain Stew Podcast is no more. It will not be renamed, but it will go under a new format of listing. And today we are going to list my favourite Green Day albums. Now, the reason I'm going to do that is because Green Day is my favourite band of all time, so much so that I've got them tattooed on my arm currently, and will do for the rest of my life. And I think, personally to me, they are the greatest rock and roll band or type of music ever. I love them so much. I will defend them to the earth. I've seen them twice now, and I think a lot about them all the time, because when I was young and just kind of discovering the kind of person that I was going through a lot of tough times, and one of the ways I got through these tough times was by listening to Green Day albums. It's changed my life. I wouldn't be the man I am now if it wasn't for Green Day. So I have spent a lot of time thinking about which album I would like top to bottom. This is mainly just because I listen to the albums all the damn time. So what we're going to do now is we're going to put them in order. I believe there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. There are 12 albums. There are 11 places on the list, and you will find out why in a minute. And yeah, I hope you enjoy this as much as I am going to enjoy talking about it. So now we shall start right at the bottom with number 11. And I don't think it would be much of a surprise to any connoisseur of Green Day that the trio of albums they brought out in 2012/2013, I think, Uno Dos Tres, are probably their weakest albums. This is for loads of different reasons. I think Billy Joe Armstrong, the lead singer of the band and creative leader of the band, I think was in a very strange place in that time. He went to rehab not long after for alcohol issues. Band never really seemed like themselves. They were I think they were clamouring for something creatively different and something to hang their hat on after the finish of the rock opera albums that they did before this. I think they were just kind of lost, and they made these 3 albums. I feel more not because it's something they wanted to do, it's because it's something they could say they've done, and because I feel like they had a problem with defining what a good song was during the time and having an idea of what needed to be cut, so they just decided to put everything. To me, they were more or less throwing everything at the wall and seeing what stuck. And with rock albums, you can't really do that, especially when you're bringing out 3 in a row. It's mind-numbing, and everything gets lost in the shuffle. And there is good stuff on these albums. I'm not going to say there's bad stuff, because some of the songs on these 3 albums I do come back to, but they are the bottom of Green Day's repertoire, sadly. And the one that I dislike the most, or I would even say, because I'm such a Green Day fan, I don't hate these albums, so the one I like the least out of all of Green Day's albums is DOS. Now, the reason I don't like this album, funny enough, it has one song on this album is going to be played at my wedding in a year. At some point, I'm going to dance to a song off this album at my wedding, and that would be Stray Heart, which, if you've ever listened to that song, is kind of strange to say, because it is a song about a dude cheating on a girl but not wanting to leave her, so it's kind of confusing to dance to at the wedding. I think it'll be interesting. Luckily, I don't think a lot of people will be listening to the music. They'll just want something to dance to, and this will be good for that. So there is stuff I like on this album, but most of the album is very much aiming for the mainstream, I feel. A lot of the album is kind of what Fall Out Boy have been doing recently, where it's trying to get hold of what music is popular nowadays, or what they think is popular music nowadays, and kind of trying to mix it with their sound, and I don't think it works. A lot of the songs on here are very bland, and just kind of misunderstanding what they were really about, and kind of getting away from their roots, and just kind of making songs that they think will get them on the charts, maybe. That's what I assume. But the main reason I dislike DOS the most is because of Nightlife. And I've seen a lot of people talk about Green Day in the last couple of years, especially since these albums come out, and I think they know and understand why Nightlife is probably the worst song that Green Day have ever produced. It's still got that catchy charm. It's still better than most songs that I would listen to. I'd probably rather listen to this than I would some dross that Will Smith's sons made, but this is just not what I'm into Green Day for. I'm into Green Day for a revolution. I'm into Green Day for their political agenda. Even back in the day, I'm into Green Day because they make catchy hooks, and the song goes somewhere or means something. This song is literally just about being attracted to a girl in a club, and I think that's why I think they were aiming for the popular song, because that's what most popular songs are about nowadays. I see a pretty girl in a club and I want to fuck her, and I feel like that's what Billy Joe's aiming for. A lot of people have suggested that because the lady he's singing about in this song is an actual person and actually raps on this song, which Green Day and rap just is so strange. That he has some sort of desire to, get with this girl, and I don't think that at all. He's happily married. Obviously, he's quite open about his sexuality and stuff like that, and do what he wants. Like, I'm not judging him. I think, and I did think that at first. I did agree. I was like, this is strange, Billy. Do you want to do something to this? What's going on here? But if you think about it, and you think about it in the context that this is what most popular music is about seeing a girl and wanting to fuck her. I mean, look at Drake, Nicki Minaj, and Lil Wayne bringing out a song recently about how they never fucked or something like that, and then they were very much talking about how attractive each of them are. I think that's kind of what he was aiming for. I think he was at a loss of ideas and heard like pop songs and was like, you know what, why don't I just make a song about how this girl's sexy? Maybe that will get me on the charts. But it's so misguided and it's so wrong. And if I was, I don't know, it's just confusing. Obviously, the rap stuff, I don't have a problem with rap. I like a lot of rap. I like Eminem. I like Drake. I like loads of different stuff. And I'm not against it. It's just on a Green Day album, you're not going there to listen to rap, and it's really weird. The song has no bounce. Like, maybe you could get away with it if the song was catchy or had a melody or something like that, but no, it's dead, and I don't want to talk about it anymore. But yeah, I feel like the stain of that song lingers throughout this album, and it's all kind of in a similar context of wanting to get on the charts and just making a song that he doesn't really believe in, but he feels could get him somewhere in the popular realm, in the mainstream. So I'm not a massive fan of this album, and I don't want to talk about it anymore. So then we move to number 10, which is Trey. And the reason I rate this higher than DOS is because I feel like it's an actual Green Day album. I feel like it has what you... If you were looking for a Green Day album that tries to hit the kind of rock opera kind of way without really having a direction, this is what you're looking for. Dirty Rotten Bastards is a good song. I will defend that to the end of the world. I like that song. I will listen to it happily. It's just, in the context of the rest of the album, it's trying to be a rock opera, but it doesn't have a story. In the very least, American Idiot and 21st Century Breakdown had a concept. This does not have a concept. I think he said in an interview once he wanted Uno, Dos and Tres to be before the party, during the party and after the party. But that's loose even by them. And I don't go to Green Day to listen to party songs. If I want to listen to party songs in context of punk, I'd probably listen to Blink-182. I don't know. So this album is probably the closest they get throughout the 3 albums to an actual Green Day vision, but there's just no effort put into it. But I love Dirty Rotten Bastards, and I think there's a couple of other songs on there that I would listen to, but I've kind of gone away from it. I think I deleted a lot of them on my iPod, so I haven't listened to them in a while. And then finally, in number 9, and the end of the trio of albums from 2012, is Uno. And I actually kind of like this album. I don't hate it. Part of me wanted to pull it above the next album on the list because, well, I'll get to that, but I actually really like a lot of the songs. I like Nuclear Family. I think it's a good start to the album. It's a bit dry, and much like with all these albums, the music is not what you expect from Green Day. You expect like loud guitars with rhythm and like power behind them, but there's none of that. It's kind of like getting along. It just goes along with it. It's just whatever. The bass has been bollocks since the 90s. I love Mike Dirnt, and he's probably the reason I started playing bass, but he hasn't done anything amazing since Warning. And in American Idiot and 21st Century Breakdown, it makes sense because you want it to be a power thing. You don't want like some punky ska bass in there, and I get that, but here this album really needs it. And I honestly think if we got the old Mike Dirnt on this album, I think it would be a lot higher on the list for me. I think that's the one thing that's missing. The drums are whatever. The drums are still good. Trey's still amazing. But the lack of vision is here. There's a lack of rhythm, and it's here. And the bass is beyond poor here. But I like a lot of the songs here. The songs weren't horrible, and they didn't hurt me as a Green Day fan when I heard them. I liked Nuclear Family. I liked Carpe Diem. I'm probably one of the few Green Day fans that like Kill the DJ. I think it's just jumpy and nice, and it's got a bit different. And again, if we had Mike Dirnt bass on Kill the DJ, that song would be something decent to listen to. Oh Love isn't a bad song. It shouldn't be the last song on the album by any stretch of the imagination. That is not how you end an album, especially as it was the title track as well. Put it higher on the album, but that's a pretty much a nitpick. End it with Stay the Night, surely. Loss of Control's good. Troublemaker's okay. Angel Blues okay. It's a very okay album by Green Day standards. And the one highlight of that album that I love and I will happily listen to any day of the week and would probably make it in on any one of these other albums is Let Yourself Go. That is a punk rock Billy Joe song. That is a song with a message, a song with a purpose, and a song that is sadly going to be forgotten because of how bad these albums are. But I want to stop talking about how bad these albums are and move on to number 9. So number 9 is 39 Smooth Slappy Hours. Now the reason this is number 9 and not higher is because I haven't really listened to it properly. I remember listening to it a couple of times and liking it. I mean, it's very rough and recorded, very do-it-yourself way, which I appreciate and goes with the kind of atmosphere they're trying to invoke. And I do like it. It's something I need to go back to, but it's not something I spent a lot of time listening. So if you're looking for some sort of review or analysis on this album, maybe I'll do that on my YouTube channel at some point. But and maybe when I do that, I'll move the album higher on the list or lower on the list, seeing how we go. I don't think anything will be worse than the trio. That's why the trio is on the bottom no matter what. Yeah, it's not something that I really know a lot about, so we'll come back to that at a later date. Number 8, again, I haven't listened to this a lot, but there is a lot of songs on Kaplunk that I do go back to. I think it's getting there, and you can see the development of it leading into Dookie and what Green Day would become, and it's a very interesting look. I really like Who Wrote Holden Caulfield because I really like that book, and it's just interesting to hear about and see my favourite band talk about Catcher in the Rye is kind of an interesting concept to me. Their cover of My Generation is obviously really, really good. It's a bit different and sounds really punk rock, and at the time it was just a perfect song for them to cover. I think Jason Andrew Reveler is on there, JAR. I'm pretty sure that's a Kaplunk song. That's a really good song. Always makes their greatest hits. So yeah, that's something you should definitely check out. But this album, again, I don't know a lot about. I've listened to a few things on it, but never really gone far into it. Do check out Who Wrote Holden Caulfield, because that is a song to see the development of Billy Joe Armstrong as a songwriter. I think is well worth listening to. Was that number 8? I think that was number 8. So number 7 is the reason that there's 11 places on the list instead of 12 for all 12 albums. Number 8 is Warning and 21st Century Breakdown. The reason I put these two together is because I can't really separate them. It's kind of hard for me to separate them. I think 21st Century Breakdown suffers through not being produced by the usual guy to do it, whose name I can't remember, but if you just Google Green Day producer on all their albums, it's always the same guy, but he wasn't there for this. This one is produced by the guy who produced Nirvana's Nevermind album. You have reason why people, including myself, would have got excited of this release, but with it was kind of more of the same of American Idiot, which I wasn't against, and that's why it's not super low down, but it's nothing revolutionary and nothing amazing. I really like Horseshoes and Hand Grenades. That's a song that always pumps me up. I really like that song they performed on Saturday Night Live, East Jesus Nowhere. That's a great song. It's maybe a bit too long for my liking to be like a proper classic song for me, but I really, really like that song. I really like Before the Lobotomy. That was a great song, and I think it is well worth looking back on. My problem I have with it is, as I said, it's more of the same as with American Idiot, and I don't think the producer really understands what Green Day's sound is. But the reason I'll defend it and put it at number 7 is because I think people misunderstand the concept of the album. See, people hear about American Idiot and then go on to this next album expecting either exactly the same or something totally different, and that is the problem that I just brought up. But the concept that these people were missing is that I feel like American Idiot is before Armageddon and warning us about what's to come with all these politicians and all this George Bush era fear. 21st Century Breakdown is what happens after the Armageddon. This is how we rebuild ourselves. This is what we need to do. This is what happens if we let all these redneck agendaed idiot politicians, American idiot politicians, take over the world and destroy it. This is how it will be afterwards, and it's very much more calming and looking back and reviewing and sobering, and whereas American Idiot is loud and forceful and aggressive to try and tell people to wake up, this is very much look at what you've caused, look at what you've done, and that's why I like this album. But my main problem and the main reason it's so low on the list is because the two main tracks, the ones that they released, Know Your Enemy and 21 Guns, I'm not a massive fan of. I don't know why. Know Your Enemy is a boring song. The solo is great, but it's very much one note over and over and over again, and it drones on me, and I don't like it. 21 Guns, I've come round on, but when I first heard it, when they first released it, I was very disappointed. When you're coming off the back of American Idiot with all their great songs, and then one of the first songs you released on the new album is 21 Guns, I was very much like, meh, no, this isn't what I want. What's happening? Where is this going? This is very alternative rock. There's no punk here. I want punk. But luckily then they released East Jesus Nowhere, and I was back in, and I bought the album. But it took a lot for me to do that, and I don't like the two title tracks, and they play at every concert, and it drives me out the bloody water. So the other album, which, you know what, I think I will put probably above. I'll keep them at number 7, but I will say I think Warning is better than 21st Century Breakdown, because since I wrote this list a couple of weeks ago, I've been listening to Warning quite a lot on my iPod, on my travels, and they have a lot of good songs. I mean, Waiting was something that got me through the hard times in my school life, and I really, really love that song. I mean, I overplayed it to the point now where when I listen to it, it's kind of, I overplayed it, so now I can't really listen to it properly. I think that album also has Minority, which is one of the greatest Green Day songs ever. I absolutely love Minority. It's one of their best songs, and it's just a beautiful setup to me for American Idiot as well. And it's jumpy, it's great, it's very cheery, and the punk scarness makes you so happy. But then when you realise what he's talking about, it just makes it all the sweeter, especially as a liberal. Hell yeah. There's also a lot of other cool stuff on there. Macy's Day Parade is a stunning song, very sobering, very interesting, and gets stuck in your head. Hold On's a good song. Jackass is alright. Blood, Sex and Booze is okay. A lot of good stuff to look back on. But Misery, that's a banger. That is such an interesting song and such a different sound for this band. Very ska, very acoustic. I think that's what a lot of people had a problem with, but I really, really like it. And to be fair, I do miss the kind of edginess and the loudness of Green Day on this album. I think there needs to be more of it. Church on Sunday struggles is kind of the definitive thing of that for me, because I feel like if you make Church on Sunday but you make it within the concept of Insomniac or Nimrod or Dookie or even American Idiot, I like it, and it would be good. But I feel like this is too... Church on Sunday is just too meandering, too kind of in between, too kind of alternative, and not too much punk. Kind of the same problem I have with 21 Guns and Know Your Enemy, which is probably why I put them in the same position on the list, because but I appreciate the experimental side of this album. I think it's interesting. I think it was brave of them, and as a lead-in to American Idiot, you can ask for a better preparation. It's already preparing you for the political side of the band, and it's kind of the first real show of that. And also it makes you really miss heavy guitars and drums and bass, just loudness. So then as soon as you got American Idiot, it's bang on. Number 5 is their latest album that they released, Revolution Radio, and this is very much Green Day back to form. This is what they need to be doing from now on. They need to be making consistently good albums that doesn't oversell themselves, something they don't need to have a massive concept for, something that doesn't just burn them straight out like the trio of albums clearly did. Revolution Radio is literally just a politically leaning album about pretty much where we are now. It's American Idiot version 2 without all the rock opera stuff, which I really like. It's loud, it's cool. A lot of the songs on there are absolutely amazing. The concept of Bang Bang is just crazy. The fact that he could even think of that. I mean, he's kind of delved into that before, because there was a song on Dookie, which I'll pull up now. I think it's Having a Blast. Yeah, Having a Blast on Dookie is pretty much the same concept. Of Having a Blast is about a guy holding up a store, I think, with a weapon, and just saying that this is going to be his last night and he's going to go out with a bang sort of thing. But Bang Bang is just something you wouldn't even get your head in. How he's managed to pretty much skewer what it's like to be one of these shooters who want to be famous is mad, and the fact that he's singing about it and doing it in such a catchy tone that makes you want to dance to it and sing along is crazy. And it's just a song that really makes you think, and it's amazing, especially the first bit of the song where it's very low, very meandering, and then suddenly the guitars bang in and hit you really, really hard. And I think that was a great thing to do after the trio of albums where the guitars are very, very much hedged back and very not loud and very not Green Day, and then to hit you with this riff straight away as loud as they can was a brilliant song. They also, it's just Green Day back to form, and it's Green Day where they need to be. And one thing I will say, Still Breathing, everyone I've played to, even if they're not Green Day fans, absolutely love Still Breathing. It's such a great, passionate, strong song that really should get more playtime. I heard it all over the radio. I never got bored of it, and I think this is what I want from modern day Green Day, not the trio of albums. But it's hard to beat some of the greatest albums of all time, such as why it's kind of middle of the list. But I think if this was any other band, this would probably be one of the best albums any other band could produce. But this is Green Day, that's why it's number 5. Number 4 is Insomniac. Now, I used to have this a lot higher because I guess when I was younger I wanted more aggression. I think that's why I've always been drawn to rock, because there's anger and hate and edginess behind it, and that's what I've always liked. And this album is Green Day at their heaviest, because this is the album Billy Joe made in response to the punk rock world saying that Green Day sold out when they made Dookie. It has a couple of my favourite songs of all time. I love Brat, I love Armitage Shanks, and every time I go to the public toilet and I read Armitage Shanks on the toilet bowls or whatever, the first thing I think of is Green Day. Geek Stink Breath is an amazing song. Babs You Villa Who, 86, Panic Song, Stuart and the Avenue, Jaded, Westbound Sign, Tightwood Hill. It's all just amazing stuff that if you like punk rock at all, this is an album that you need to check out. And the reason this goes quite high is because of one song for me that puts it above everything else, and that is Brain Stew. As you can tell by the name of this podcast, the song that I use at the start, and pretty much my whole life, anyone who's even talked to me for longer than a couple of days, a couple of hours, will know that Green Day and Brain Stew is one of my favourite, if not my favourite song of all time, because I do suffer from insomnia sometimes. I mean, considering I'm making this podcast at early hours in the morning, I definitely suffer from insomnia. So to hear a song from my favourite band of all time with a powerful guitar riff that just hits you every time you hear it, has a great chorus of literally just this evolving riff that goes more and more and gets louder and louder and more impactful about insomnia and about how sometimes he can't sleep as well, and what it's like to not sleep is it's probably the reason I got drawn in. It was one of the first Green Day songs I heard as well. I remember being on a coach trip with school, and this kid who I was kind of friends with was playing songs, and I was listening to American Idiot after I just bought that album, and he played me this song and I fell in love with it, and I've never stopped listening to it. I've probably played it as many times as Waiting back in the day, but I haven't got bored of this song, and I just love it. I love it. So that's why Insomniac is so high. Number 3 is Dookie. Dookie is Green Day to me. If I was gonna make you listen to an album that defines this band, especially back then, I'd probably give you Dookie. Everyone knows Basket Case. Everyone knows Welcome to Paradise. Everyone knows these famous songs. She, When I Come Around, all this sort of stuff. The amount of openness in the lyrics of this hit record. I mean, it has a song on there talking about Billy Joe's bisexuality. Just on an album, just on a hit album, out of nowhere, you know? A song that I mentioned earlier about holding up I'm guessing, some sort of store with a gun and saying this is going to be his last night. The first song on the album is about not growing up, but burning out. Which is so funny when you think about the trio of albums that I keep coming back to. I can't get over, especially when you write a song with the lyrics, I'm not growing up, I'm burning out, and then you produce the trio, whatever. We're moving on. Obviously, Longview is the greatest bass riff of all time, in my opinion. I will never get bored of hearing that bass riff. The music in general on this album is absolutely amazing. Everything is jumpy, everything just flows, it all hits you in different ways. It's all defining, and was the perfect song for the time as well. I think people were looking for something kind of weird and happy, and this is a 90s album quintessentially, which is why it's probably not as high on the list for me, because it is a very 90s album, but I love it so much. There's even a song on here called Pulling Teeth about, I think, misery, which is funny because then he later writes another song called Misery, which has nothing to do with the movie, but if you listen to the lyrics, it's about a guy trying to appease a girl who's fallen in love with him, but it sounds like something from Stephen King's Misery. And it's just a great album, and I will recommend it to anyone. All by Myself at the end of the album is just a fun way to end, and it's very 90s. It's what you want from the 90s, but you can't beat it, in my opinion. Number 2 is Nimrod. Now, the reason I love Nimrod is because it's such a different album. There's so much on here that's like I always go back and listen to. I was going to put Dookie above this. I was going to put Insomniac above this, actually. But I noticed in the last couple of weeks that every time I put my iPod on shuffle, I don't think I've ever skipped a Nimrod song. And I noticed that it probably has more plays than any other Green Day album on my iPod. Everything from Nice Guys Finish Last, Hitchin' a Ride, Redundant, All the Time, Platypus I Hate You, Uptight, Jinx, Hayashuka, Reject. It's just, there's so much good stuff on here, and so much experimentation. I think a lot of people after Insomniac and Dookie was kind of wanting them to play the same sort of music, but when they started experimenting with Nimrod, a lot of people were kind of taken aback. But I think Nimrod is going to go down as probably one of the greatest albums of the 90s, or at least it should do. And it just has everything you want. It has nice, normal kind of punk rock songs about being a reject in Reject. It has powerful, loud songs like Platypus I Hate You, Jinx, and Take Back. It even has classic Graduation, Never Going Out of Style acoustic songs like Good Riddance, Time of Your Life, which will never not be played on the radio, will never not be played at weddings, will never not, including mine, will never not be played at graduations and all this other stuff because it's a classic song. Maybe it's a classic song because of the violins, but it's still a classic song. And then probably one of the most underrated songs in Green Day's library is King for a Day. Now that song plays very much on the ska kind of punk rock roots and would probably lead quite nicely into Warning. But it's just such a different song that once you listen to, you can never get out of your head. And I imagine even if you've heard that song before, and I'm talking about it now, the first thing that comes into your head is those trumpets and that rhythm. It's such a fun little song that never gets old, is timeless, and is just about the weirdest of subjects, the strangest of subjects. That, I don't know, I just love this album. It's so different, and it's fun for the whole family. There's a song for everyone on there. It all beautifully links together. It shouldn't work, but to me it does, and that's why it's my number 2. But mainly just because I go back to it a whole hell of a lot. And then finally, number 1. I don't think it's a surprise to anyone. Number 1 Green Day album of all time is American Idiot. Rather than getting into all the songs, because I feel like everyone knows the songs, I will talk about them a little bit, but I think I'd rather tell a story. And that story is of me at school, hating my life, not having any friends, not talking to anyone, just not enjoying my life, feel like I'm stuck in prison at this shithole of a place, and finding American Idiot in a Virgin store back in the early 2000s, middle 2000s, let's say, and it changing my life. After hearing this album, I didn't need any friends, I didn't need anybody. I could just put this song on my iPod, put the earphones in my ears, and every day at lunch and break I'd listen through this album and not really give a shit. St. Jimmy got me through every day of school and every day of my life at that point. It kind of gave me a reason to live because I absolutely loved these albums. That Billy Joe and the rest of Green Day think that the world is in a bad situation and they managed to create this rock opera of an album which shouldn't work. A punk rock opera should not work. Punk rock is all about short songs, quick to the point, get out, play your shit and leave. Operas are long songs, changing tempos, changing pace, and just keep you going for a long time. And they've managed to mesh these two things together. Just listen to the album. If you've never listened to the album, especially if you've never listened to the album the whole way through but you like the songs, it's well worth it. I don't think there's one bad song on this album. Looking at it right now, I can't name a single one. American Idiot, the greatest selected song, release song ever. You hear that song, you see that video, you're sold instantly, you're buying that album. Jesus of Suburbia shouldn't work, but a 9-minute song about how this guy's disillusioned in a strange world in the form of punk rock should not work, but it does, and it's probably one of the greatest songs of all time. Holiday is well loved. First song I fell in love with on this album. So politically, so striking, so aggressive, but still flows beautifully and is an easy listen. Boulevard of Broken Dreams is so powerful and so strong and speaks to so many different people. Are We the Waiting? probably the weakest song on the album, but still, as weak as that is probably make any one of any of the other albums, and is just something different to kind of break down and get you all pumped up for the next song, which is my favourite song of all time. I've said that a lot today, but it's between this, Minority, and Brain Stew. Just the aggression in it, the powerfulness in it, the jumpiness in it, the excitement, it gets you pumped up. It's a great song. And the line, "I am a son of a bitch," and Edgar Allan Poe, has always drawn me to this song. I really love that album, mainly because I love the poetry of Edgar Allan Poe, and I just love the punk rock idea of being a son of a bitch, and just linking those two things, and I think it perfectly illustrates who Billy Joe Armstrong thinks he is. Give Me Novocaine is drumming at his best, is lyrics at the best, kind of breaking down what it's like to be an addict in any form. She's a Rebel and Extraordinary Girl are two great love songs that you can relate to anyone, but sticks to the punk rock roots perfectly. Letter Bomb is such a good breakdown of society, where we are today, or back then, and probably even worse now, and is something that is well worth listening to nowadays, now that I think about it. Wake Me Up is When September Ends is a beautiful eulogy to his father, who he lost at a young age. Homecoming is such a fun little song to have at the end, but it's still really important because this album's rock opera content is about this guy called the Jesus of Suburbia, who has a partnership / rivalry with Saint Jimmy, and how they try and get on, and how they try and romance what's her name, who's a character, I didn't forget the name. And even though Homecoming sounds very much like a song that they're just jamming out, it has the important part of the death of St. Jimmy in it, and is powerful and strong while still being fun and loose. And then finally you have What's Her Name, which is a somber way to end the album and lead us into Armageddon, which comes just before 21st Century Breakdown. Also, I would just like to say about American Idiot that this album was so important to me that I ended up getting it tattooed on my forearm, and the cover of that album is just a part of this tattoo that I have on my forearm, and the rest is their badge, with Rage and Love, which is from Jesus and Suburbia, and it's just probably the most important album of my life, and is the reason I am who I am, along with all these other albums, including the trio, even though I hate them. So that is where I would rank every Green Day album. I hope you enjoyed. I will be doing this from now on. I will be listing and ranking things rather than talking about just one thing and trying to get an hour or a while or half an hour worth of content out of that, because it clearly wasn't working. There's a lot of things that I want to rank in the world of wrestling, in the world of comic books, in the world of movies, in the world of music, in the world of anything I see fit. So it's still got that brain stew element of whatever the fuck I want to talk about. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed. If you did, why don't you subscribe or check out the rest of my videos, including my vlogs, or you could always check out my stuff on SoundCloud. I have loads of radio audio projects that I did when I was at university many a year ago, and yeah, hopefully I'll talk to you guys soon.